do a very, very quick preamble. So yes, this is Reverse Spotlight on Huxley, and very excited to talk to Ben and Cass today about this project. I personally have been a fan of it from the very beginning, and I think one of the first comics projects in the Web3 space that, you know, really said like, hey, we're doing something that could just be an amazing graphic novel without any of this technology, and yet it's so much more interesting because of this technology. So very excited to kind of talk about the story and the world, and then a little bit about how people can engage with all the different elements that that you guys have been building. But I want to hand it off to Ronan, a good friend and wonderful collaborator who has agreed to host this session today. So Ronan, it's
Awesome.
you.
I appreciate it. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to having a conversation. You know, Ben and I have kind of built a rapport over the last 2 years, and kind of over time as he kind of launched this project and with the project before it. So I was really looking forward to reconnecting with him and Cass, who I also connected with early in the space. And so really looking forward to you know, talking a little bit about Huxley, what you guys have done, and a little bit about where you guys are now and where the project's kind of headed. So if you could, Ben, maybe give us a little bit. Actually, let's do introductions first, so we can, everybody knows who, you know, you guys are. You know, we can have Ben introduce himself. Cass, if you want to introduce yourself, and then we can talk a little bit about the project and exactly what's going on.
Sure. My name is Ben Mauro. I'm a senior concept designer and art director in the game and film industry for the past 15 years or so. While I was working on a bunch of big movies like the Hobbit trilogy, Call of Duty, Halo, I was slowly building my own intellectual property in the form of this graphic novel universe called Huxley. And it's a post-apocalyptic sci-fi adventure epic. And yeah, I started it before Ethereum even existed, and it was just something I was really passionate about and wanted to create. And yeah, we'll get into that more in a bit.
Yeah, Cass.
Awesome. What's up, everyone? I'm Cass Vegas. I'm an NFT community builder, head of community for Feature and for Huxley. And there are two things I really love being around. One is novel infrastructure, and two is amazing art. And I think we have both of that together with Huxley and Feature. So it's been a long journey. We're actually almost at our 1-year anniversary. It's this month for Huxley's initial launch. We're on issue 4 out of 6, and we're just about closing up issue 4 before we go on to issue 5. So it's been a wonderful journey so far, and I'm happy to be here.
That's awesome. Part of what I really love about this story and kind of like where Huxley comes from is the fact that, to Ben, to your point, is that this is something that you've been kind of working on and you conceptualized before blockchain was even in existence, right? This is something that you've kind of worked on. And as a professional, you decided to kind of pull the trigger when you were introduced to Web3 and NFTs. Tell us a little bit about that, a little bit about, you know, the origin of Huxley and you know, that blend when you came into the Web3 world.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it was a result of just working in the film industry. I think I was working on like Elysium and Chappie and these kind of movies at the time, and it was an amazing experience working on these big things, but then you start to see like, I really need to start creating something for myself. I know it's going to take a long time because I still have a lot to learn, but I should probably start now. And a lot of the production techniques and things we'd have to do on the job weren't as creatively fulfilling sometimes, because it's kind of like a never ending arms race of like, it's got to be more photoreal. It's got to be the newest technique. It's got to be the next big thing. And a lot of the reasons I enjoyed being an artist was just drawing with pencil and paper and coming up with my own ideas and painting them. And Huxley started as a way for me, almost like therapy from the day job of just like, I need to have something that's mine that no one can take away from me. And then I'll feel okay going into the office and doing this for other people. So it kind of started like that. And over the years of committing a lot of time and figuring out what I wanted to be and do, and I just kind of chipped away at it for a very long time. I almost released half of it when I was at the halfway point, like maybe like 4 years ago or so. I almost went to a publisher to release like the first part, and all my graphic novel friends told me like, no, you should finish it. Just, you know, take your time and finish it before you get it out there. And had I not listened to them, I probably couldn't have released it in Web3, because then a publisher would have had the rights tied up and stuff. And so by the time I was getting done to finish, and I had spent a year prior adapting it into a cinematic trailer with an amazingly talented team, with Sava Zakovic, and all this stuff started happening. And it was like, well, I was planning to do this through the Web2 kind of gatekeepers and grind my way up the ladder in Hollywood and the publishing world, and let's go for it. Let's see what this new avenue has for creators, and just kind of dove in and hope for the best.
Oh, Brian, you're muted. But
yep,
awesome.
There we go. That's what happens when it's live, right? Yeah, no, I think that when I first saw some of your work and realized that you had come from kind of the world that you came from, I was really surprised. And this was really kind of early because you started with a different project on Flow and with kind of like doing some different stuff. That someone like of your caliber had put attention on the space and also had put like themselves out there. And I think like the last point that you touched on, which is, you know, you're a creator, and how that kind of inspired you, I think is such a important part of the story. When you were considering Huxley and started considering the way that you would implement NFTs and Web3, where did you kind of start versus where you kind of ended up? Like, I'm really interested to know, like, what were the core, like, you know, concepts, right? Like, I'm going to come in and I'm going to do just a collectible, or I want to come in and I want to do something collaborative versus kind of, okay, then we decided and evolved to what it is now.
Well, I think a lot of it was more of just kind of a logistical, and because there's just too much work done. It's like 10 years of my life. It's like, how do you chop up this giant elephant so that it doesn't overwhelm a market, right? Like, and at the time there was a lot of companies that were just like, let's just dump everything at once and that's it, man. And then they would bail on me and go to some other person and dump their thing and bail on them. And I was like, well, that doesn't seem like a great way to do things. I had a pretty good idea how I wanted to structure everything, but it was just finding the right teams and partners to like execute that. And working with Steven in the feature, I feel like we were pretty aligned with like, this is the right way to do it. We're going to spread this out over a really long time, because that's how you build a real thing. You don't just like, you don't release a Star Wars comic and then bail on it and then expect Star Wars to become a big thing. You know, you have to like, it's like planting a seed that you need to nurture and grow and take care of and grow over a long period of time. And a lot of it was just around these ideas of what's the best way to do this over a long period of time and do it in a natural way. And yeah, just do it in a way that doesn't overwhelm things immediately and isn't too slow, isn't too fast. And it's always a balance though. Yeah,
for sure. So you kind of land with Huxley. You're going to approach the NFT space in Web3, and you're putting together your strategy. And at some point, Cass joins the team. I know like Cass has been on the team since pretty early on. So Cass, tell us a little bit about like, you know, how you heard about Huxley, how you got introduced to the project, and kind of where you fit into the piece, you know, your big piece of that puzzle.
Sure. From the start with the feature, Huxley was the first IP that we actually brought on to the feature to kind of really take on that Web3 leg. So it was really actually fun for me to read a bit about the lore behind Huxley and help create some of those channels in the Discord and bring on some of the mods that help foster the community that we've built from 0 to 1 and beyond. And so the characters were really interesting to me. And I was thinking, hey, we should have robots, humans, and AI, and kind of just have that fun interaction between, again, inspiration from the lore behind what Ben has been building in Huxley. And so that's where I kind of started on the community side, was just getting the vibe of his storytelling, looking through his art, and then fostering that community. And it's been a blast. I think there's a subtle difference between Web 2 and Web 3, but that difference is super important. And that is that community aspect, because there's no other time in history where you have this opportunity of instant feedback from a community that's around your, in this case, Ben's life's work, right? And so it's that balance that Ben is talking about of, when you release things, how you do it, how you're involving the community, but then also respecting the life's work of Ben and bringing the community in that way that's mutually enjoyable for everyone, but respectable for Ben's life's work.
Yeah, that's very cool. And as somebody who talks to creators often, I know how precious, their work can be to them, especially when they've put so much time and effort into it. So it's really interesting for a creator to make that decision to open up and say, I'm going to bring this not only to a team, right, to work with a team and do this professionally, but a team that is essentially also your consumer, your biggest fan, right? It's like your collector. And so I'd love for you to speak a little bit, Cass, about on that relationship between the community, because as you pointed out, it's so important, right? For the community to the project of Huxley, kind of a little bit about what that means, for the project and how that interaction is currently handled. I know you guys have, again, the humans, the robots, and the AI. So you've got some PFP stuff going on, but you also have comic books and a whole lot going on Discord as well.
Yeah, I just want to say this is definitely a really wonderful community. And I say that because everyone is so respectful in the Discord. And that's something to be really proud of in a space that moves quickly, in a space where people's attention span is gone at the snap of a finger at a new project. And you have to remember that this IP, we've been dropping one comic at a time. In terms of the first issue, it was a 10K drop. But then we have to do that again with another 10K on issue 2. And then we did it again with another issue for number 3. And this is massive. No other team is coming out and repeatedly dropping something, in the same vein, its own comic, right? It's impressive to do that once, but it's really impressive to continue to do that. And so I think that speaks to Ben's work, that speaks to the community itself, that speaks to the patience of this community. And I appreciate that the most, because we're asking people to go on this ride for us for 6 of these, plus, as you mentioned, avatars in there, from humans to robots to, in the future, AI. So it's a very bullish community, but through and through, because it's a long-term community as well.
Very cool. So to speak to that, we know that you've got the PFPs, you have the comics. How else do you guys really engage with the community? What is, that, because right now, to your point, one, we're in a bear market, right? And two, it's very, very competitive in that market. So to keep interest for, a week or two, which is what most of these projects tend to do, versus you're coming up on a year anniversary and you have a very diehard, community, like you said, and people who are really into what you're doing. And I know the first PFP project did relatively well, took a little time to really pick up, but the last one did extremely well, and people have just continued to be excited about the project. How do you accomplish that?
I'll let Ben hop in here, but I do want to say that he's very involved, and that's the other difference, is even though he's this high level, very busy artist, he's in the Discord all the time, and he engages with them. Sometimes we do fun things like playing Call of Duty together, or little tournaments. So I'll let Ben take over for more examples, but love the fact that you're always awesome in there with us, Ben.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just because I always think so long term. It's not always the sexiest or exciting thing, but that's just how things get done over a long period of time. I feel like a lot of what makes Huxley different is I spent the years to make the product before I released it. And it feels like a lot of the projects that come out and maybe rise and fall real fast it's kind of the complete opposite, where it's hey, here's an image that represents something I'm going to make someday. If you buy this, I'll make something in 10 years. Whereas Huxley that time has already been completed, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of it is just the kind of you can't fake the time, you can't fake the years, and the product is something that I'm really happy with, and it's something that people can enjoy immediately, and kind of have that track record of completing these things, and just always focusing on the most high quality thing I can possibly do. The humans took a bit longer than I had hoped, but everyone seemed extremely happy with the quality, and I guess building that relationship of just like, okay, if Ben's taking his time, it's because it's going to end up in the art.
I want to jump in for a second if I can. I think, as I said, Huxley was one of the first things that I came across in the space, and, lifelong comics fan, definitely going to the store every week for me as a kid, and, got my 25 long boxes of, still collected material to lean on. But, it was one of the first things I came across that really did feel like, okay, we're using mechanic to release this thing, but it's not about that. It's, it is this world that you've built, this universe that you've created, and these, really compelling characters that we want to kind of follow through this journey. So, I mean, part of why we wanted to put this event on this weekend is to actually kind of shift the spotlight towards that side of things, and really go I would want to be a fan of this outside of Web3. So let's tell people a little bit about this universe. What was some of the inspiration? Where did this come from? I've got stuff that I can track back 10 years myself and go oh, I've been kind of working on this, up to this point, and it's turned into X, Y, or Z. So I'd love to hear, kind of what was the germ of the idea? Did you always know it was going to be a graphic novel? How did this just develop from a story and creative perspective?
Yeah, a lot of it was because when we started putting it out there, a lot of people were just like, why didn't you just make a movie? Or why didn't you just if you want to make this a movie someday, it's well, this is how long it takes to do things. And to make a movie, that's sometimes 50 to thousands of people to make a big Star Wars sized movie. So it's well, I can't do that myself. And a graphic novel is still one of the few ways that a single creator can create an entire IP themselves. It takes a long time. If you look at some of your favorite graphic novels, right, or comics, there's a ton of names in there. So even there could be 20 people working on a Spider-Man comic, right? So but at the end of it, it is still possible for a single person to do that. And a lot of my favorite creators, like Katsushiro Otomo, Kira everywhere in my room, and Hayao Miyazaki and Mobius, and I'm a huge fan of Meta Barons from Juan Jimenez, and there's a ton of these
I can see the
80s, 90s, 80s, 90s, it's a melting pot of Otomo, Mobius, Juan Jimenez, and all this stuff I love, kind of all mixed together, and doing my own thing with it, and telling a story that I really like, and you just kind of have to do something that it's a little selfish, but just doing something that you think is so cool, and just hoping that other people will like it as well. And that was another reason I didn't even post really on social media about that I was working on it. I didn't really show progress. I didn't show sneak peeks over 10 years. It was just because I also didn't want to be influenced by outside influences, right? And I saw friends doing that, right? You post art and you're wow, this one got way more likes than that one. I guess I'll make all my art like this. And then you basically going into whatever kind of the internet tells you to do. And I didn't want that to happen, at least early on. And I just really like these ideas of something created in isolation. I feel because of the internet, it's harder and harder to have that happen. And it ends up resulting in a lot of our entertainment to kind of feel the same in a way. If you look at a bunch of movies on streaming networks, I would say the last 20 movies I saw that were streaming movies funded by these networks kind of all feels like the same movie, the same tone, the same, it just feels like we're getting the same food over and over again. It's where's that unique flavor?
Yeah.
And I feel a lot of that can only happen if someone is really dead set on I really want to make this thing. I'm not going to let anything influence me. And that's how we get new art movements the Bauhaus and all these things. Before the internet, people could just come together and come to a conclusion about something and create a really unique idea that is so different to what everyone else in the world is doing.
Yeah.
And I was trying to replicate that on my own, locked in my studio.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, one of my mentors, I have an illustration degree as well. One of my mentors, Brian Stelfreeze, who people may know from like the Black Panther or other Shadow of the Bat run of covers, which is amazing. But he said when I was in art school, it's like you find your style not by trying to find your style. You find your style just because it's just the way that you make something, right? So it's like it's a draw 100 hands. Like by the time you draw 100 hands, the way you draw a hand based on a real hand, that's your style. Like it's just the natural expression of your vision of the world, for example. And so it feels like that's a really intentional part of kind of how this came together. And it shows, like you can see the influences, but you can also really see that it's your expression of this universe, which I think is part of what makes it so resonant.
And I think that helps things stand out as well. Like because like every character, like I drew it on paper, like every shape and detail is 100% like from my mind, right? Whereas I can't say that if I do things in 3D nowadays and it's like, oh, I'm probably taking a model from here. And then it becomes a little samey or not as unique. So like, I'm really proud that all these characters were drawn from my hand on paper. And then once we went to adapt it into the cinematic trailer, like, because I know ZBrush and all these sculpting tools, I can help make sure it translates as one-to-one as possible. And I feel like that led to a very unique thing as we adapted it, and a lot of people are like, whoa, what's that? Like,
yeah,
everything in those shots is like handmade. Like, who does that, right? Like, I love that because that's what I love, right? When you watch a movie, you're like, whoa, like, who does that? Like, who spends that much time on that one background that you're gonna see for like 5 seconds? Like, who?
Right.
Like, I still have these Akira background paintings because, like, who does that? Like, it's so good. It's like it's still like the best painting ever made.
Yeah.
For a background painting that you see for 2 seconds.
Right.
And it's like, who does that? I want to.
Well, you do that, obviously, but
well, I'm trying. Like, who? But it's like a lost, like, passion to make something so amazing. Yeah. I feel like there's a few things over the years that I feel like recently, maybe Arcane was one of those where I was like, wow.
Okay.
Right? Mm-hmm. But it's so rare. It took them like 7 years just making that, or some long period of time.
Yep.
To get that moment of just like, wow, who does that? That's
every
so cool.
Frame is a piece of art in and of itself. Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. So the piece I would love for people that don't know the project to kind of get a sense of is, what is the world? Like, what appealed to you about the world? Where did the world come from? Like, what is the kind of core? If you had to pitch it, I hate to put it in these terms, but if you had to pitch it to me as like, what's the movie of this, or what's the universe that we're going to play in, what is that for people that don't know?
I guess like in a nutshell, it'd be like if George Miller directed Star Wars, something like this. If George Miller directed an R-rated Star Wars, I want to see that movie. So that's kind of what it is in a nutshell, I guess. But yeah, it's these two post-apocalyptic scavengers that find an ancient sentient robot that has a secret treasure map inside and leads them on this giant globe-trotting adventure that can change the fate of the galaxy as they know it. Is a kind of overview without spoiling too much.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I love it.
Do you have purely, more mechanically, do you have, obviously you've got 6 episodes planned, four's coming soon. Do you start with, great, I know exactly what all 6 are, and then I know how this first story fits into a bigger story and go from there? I mean, how kind of granular are you working backwards, forwards? How do you approach storytelling?
Well, it's all done. Like before we launched issue 1, the whole thing was done. So all 6 were done from the start, and it's been more of just like again, kind of like, what's the best way to release these pieces? And I initially it was going to just be like a whole movie, but because it was so slow, like every page took me like usually a week to sometimes 4 weeks, depending on the page. I'm not very fast. Like it's very slow, methodical process. Towards the end, I got faster. Maybe there was like 10 pages a month kind of thing. But at the beginning, it was very slow and just finding the style, making sure everything was as detailed as possible. But the way I would block out story beats and they kind of naturally fell into kind of like breaks, almost like an episode. Like here's the ending of an episode, the way I would tell stories. And there was generally 6 pretty big like breaks that felt right. So it naturally felt, okay, we could probably break this into 6 issues that feel like logical, like episodes of a show or parts of a big movie. So a lot of it was more along that lines. Like maybe 3 felt better, maybe 5, maybe 6, but I think overall 6 felt very natural into about 30-page chunks.
Well, Ben, tell us about the villain, one of the villain characters, because you did have to kind of, I love this story that you tell about like drawing this villain. And this kind of breaks into, besides being these 6 distinct chunks, the storyline and how you were developing that villain and what happened there.
So I did everything chronologically, so I wasn't hopping around. It's very much like, because I was doing this in between other jobs. Like initially I was like, oh, I'm going to finish this movie and then I'm going to take 6 months off to make my graphic novel. And it just ended up being, I'm never going to have time to take that time off, because a new job would come in and it would be so cool. And I just figured out I need to multitask and do both at the same time. So I knew what page 1 looked like. And then after that, I knew what page 2 looked like, and just kind of went from there chronologically. But the whole thing, what Kaz was getting at, to me, I view as like a big sculpture. And that's another reason I didn't want to post anything as I did it, because like there was this like demon robot character that we see at the end of the first issue, and he was going to be one of the bigger villains in the story. And once I got to this kind of minor secondary villain in issue 3, he just turned out so cool that he made the robot seem like a baby or something. And I was like, well, that I can't like, I have to go back and change that because it's not like evil looking enough. And I basically had to go back and like make sure that looked so cool so that this guy didn't overpower him, like visually as a design. And so there's a bit of that push and pull. Like I tried not to do that too much, but in instances like that where it's just like, well, I'm not going to make this guy look worse. I'll make this guy look scarier. Because you're basically building your cast of characters as you go. And that's also what made it harder. Like it's not set in New York. It's not set in modern day. I can't just look at photos and like, oh, it's like a city or something. It's like, I have to design everything. And each page would basically be the hardest day of my life, because it's like, okay, I finished this page and then it's like, okay, tomorrow I have to design a new vehicle that doesn't exist. I have to design 2 new characters. I have to design a city. I have to design a market full of 100 people walking around that all have to be totally new designs. And it's just like, oh my God. But you kind of just
you're cursed with being a concept designer on some of the biggest movies and franchises in the world. So you've also got this incredibly high bar that you're going like, oh man, like not only do
I don't want it to look like that. I've already worked on that. I want it to be blue. And so that was like daily punishment for sure, but fun, right? It's just like, well, because there's part of that where you get like anxiety about thinking about all the work that you still have to do, especially early on.
Yeah.
But then after a while, it's like, yeah, but think of how much better I'll be by the, because there was times at the beginning where like I felt like environments where I was a bit scared of them. It's like, well, I've never drawn anything that like a giant like landscape. Like I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that. And I redid one page like 8 times over a month, and I still wasn't happy. And I just had to learn to like, I'm not good enough to solve this problem now, but I need to move on. And I trust that in a year, I'm going to be good enough to come back and solve that problem. So there's instances like that where like, I recognize that I'm just not good enough right now, but I trust that by the end, I will attain a higher level of skill that I can go back and solve that problem.
I mean, I think that's some incredible advice right there, just to like double down on for people. Like, you know, that's, I've never heard someone put it quite in those terms, but it's like, you know, the only way to get good at anything is to just do it and do it and do it and do it. To be able to recognize like, oh, this thing, you know, this area that I'm struggling with, like, okay, maybe I don't have my hands around this now. I'll just keep going, as opposed to like hitting my head against the wall and then, you know, come back around. I think that's actually incredibly good advice for anyone, you know, kind of working on a creative endeavor. So yes, well said.
Yeah. Well, because a lot of it too, like, yeah, at the back of your head, you're always trying to plan, like, when is this going to be finished? And every time I would like be stuck, it's like that goalpost keeps getting further away. You're like, oh my God, that means it's going to be done in like a year later than I thought if I don't solve this problem. And so a lot of it, yeah, it's just like you need to learn to like let go a little bit. Otherwise, you're going to get one page done a year and you're still not going to be happy. So there's a lot of life lessons learned through that entire journey. Yeah.
Did you know initially, like when you first conceived all of this, I mean, did you know it was going to take the shape of a comic or graphic novel, or were you exploring kind of other things initially?
Yeah, I think initially it was very much, well, a lot of it was just because of that. Like, well, I don't have millions of dollars. I don't have like 300 million to make a Star Wars movie. You know, it's like, well, I can do this myself. I have Photoshop, I have pencils, I can scan things. And a lot of the time early on, I was traveling. I kind of sold all my belongings and I was traveling out of a suitcase. So I basically just had a little portable scanner, a teeny laptop, and I was just doing it on the road. So a lot of the early days was just literally me at a coffee shop in an airport waiting for my flight and like doing page 18 or something and like scanning it out of my backpack.
That's cool.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Do you still like have those scans?
Yeah, I have all the scans.
Like you have like all that, like
all the pictures are. Let me see.
Oh, dude, you gotta. That's gotta be like.
Only it was.
Do you guys have like an art book or anything planned? Like, I just love like for me as a like that's so cool. Like that is the coolest. I mean, first of all, I want to say thank you for sharing like all of that information because as a content creator, right, but also as somebody who I write in my spare time, and I've always like really like tried to take on this big, huge challenge of writing something epic, right, quote unquote epic. And a lot of what you said really resonated for like my process and where I get stuck. So I appreciate that. Like it's really cool to like hear that like other creatives. That's so awesome.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's just all it's like time.
Yeah,
your life on paper.
Yeah.
That's so awesome. But as a creator, you sometimes you want to be so big because you have like this grandiose idea and knowledge of where that could go. But you really do have to break it down and put it into chunks. But now that you have like put it into chunks, and now that you've kind of like got the train going, you're about to hit your year anniversary. A year ago, we were talking about the comic books. Or I guess about a year and a half ago, we talked about the comic books. Then a year ago, we talked a little bit about the PFPs. But you've got some other stuff coming, right? Like outside of that, now you're like going to breach into some other mediums. And for me, that's super big for bridging the gap of adoption to Web3, right? Like, and so like having an IP that kind of transcends that gap is huge. I'd love to hear a little bit about where Huxley is going next.
Yeah, so there's we have Ari Rod and Jerome Chen on as producers for the adaptation of the graphic novel's feature film, who they're incredible creators and producers. Jerome was director and Love, Death, and Robots. Ari produced Iron Man and a bunch of Uncharted and a bunch of amazing films. And yeah, I'm thrilled to have those guys on board to do that. And in the middle of have been working with a team, big, medium, small, to make a vertical slice game demo that's pretty close for all of us to be able to enjoy together. And also I'm in the middle of working with Unit Image, who is one of my favorite VFX CG studios, on the next story trailer, which starts one of the prequel stories that I've been in development, and just will expand things in a bigger way. And just trying to push things on all fronts. There's also a lot of the prequel stories. I'm still not sure if those will be a graphic novel, if that will be a traditional book novel, because I really love reading traditional novels as well, or if that will be some kind of hybrid art storybook. But there's two pretty big next parts that I'm working on at the moment as well.
That's awesome. Not to scare off your clients and collaborators, but is there a world where this becomes kind of the full gig?
Yeah, I mean, well, that's always the goal, right? And there's also a ton of other stuff that we also have like a huge range of like collectible figurines that, again, we were just sitting on all this stuff, and it's like when is the best time to do that as well? Because those would be I want them on my desk next to Master Chief and stuff.
I need to add those to the collection, man. That's where I am not gonna lie, the when I distinctly remember scrolling through the Huxley page when I first learned about it, and scrolling, and all the way at the bottom you had photos of the action figures, and I was like, I gotta get one. Like, so I'm collecting this shit. Like, that's what got me in. And I've been I think Cass told you I got my issue 1 in recently, which is so cool. Like, it really hits that collector, like, like you get it in this beautiful box. It's got this sticker that at first you're like, oh, I'm going to tear this off. Then you realize it's actually your print number, which correlates to your token ID of your NFT. And then you open it up and it's just this gorgeous book. I haven't even pulled it out yet. Like, but I do want to sit and like put some time and read it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it's good to hear about like kind of where you're going. I'm really interested in one more question from like a creator's aspect. And then I know we can kind of start tying things up. With all of that going on and with this like kind of universe, right, that you have created, at some point, do you plan on kind of like handing over the reins and letting others create within that universe? And, whether it's like professional associates or whether it's like, letting someone come in and say, hey, I want to write a Mandalorian for Huxley, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like for me, the comic book to me is like me doing it all myself and getting that out of my system. So I view everything outside of this as like, I'm open to that now. Like with the cinematic trailer, like I can't do all that myself. I need to work with really talented people that I trust, and was able to find Sava Zakovic and amazing team, Antonio Esparza on the characters, and really small like team that we just did an amazing job. Sava is busy on all these amazing things he's doing in his personal films, so I had to find a new partner for the next part in unit. And yeah, it's always like learning new experience, and there's plans for a film and also a TV show. And for a TV show, I do very much view it more like a Mandalorian. Like, let's find the best directors, writers that have something cool they want to say, and let them tell unique stories in this world. Maybe some of them are mine, maybe some of them are new. I'm totally open to that, because I feel like that made Mandalorian so special, where each episode was still connected in a bigger arc, but each episode really felt like a unique voice that had something different to say, at least to me. And I just felt like that made that show really strong.
Yeah. Very cool. Very, very cool. Well, I mean, we probably should start to wrap up, but Ben, I'm geeking out here. I really love everything you built, and I'm just a fan of the universe and you as an artist. And so just, very excited that this long labor of love has made it into reality. I know that has to be just an incredible feeling as well, to be sitting here at the end of that journey going like, it's happening. It's happening.
Yeah. But also knowing like how long it took for the comic. Like, yeah, I'm planning, I did my first 10 years, and now I'm into the next 10 years. And, now we did one, so 9 more to go until my second decade anniversary. but I'm thinking like that, right? I'm not thinking like, what do I do in 2 months? It's like, here's the next 10 years that I want to accomplish all these things now.
Well, I think you can feel that in the project as well. I think you can just feel the deliberateness of it, like, from top to bottom. And, it certainly no concern that like, oh, this is going away. It's just, Huxley is coming, whether you're ready for it or not. So you might as well get on the train, get on the ride. And Cass, I'd love at some point to circle back and talk to you a little more about feature, because I know you guys are doing some really interesting stuff kind of on the platform side of all of this as well, which is also an interest of mine and ours. So maybe we can do that another time. But so it sounds like people should keep an eye out for the game and the other stuff that's coming. And is issue 4 still minting right now?
I think it closed yesterday, actually.
Closed yesterday.
So that is gone, and now we're planning 5 and 6. Yeah, planning for 5 and 6 right now.
Yeah, awesome. So more Huxley coming, and man, just really, really glad to be able to hang out and hear a little bit more about the journey.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you guys for having us. It's been
Where-
a really enjoyable conversation.
Where should people connect with the two of you? Where's the best place to kind of follow and get involved?
I would say hop into our Twitter, Huxley Saga. Also follow Ben Mauro and Ben Mauro Art. And then mine is Cas Vegas, KAS__ Vegas, like Las Vegas. That is my last name, not where I'm from. An easy last name to remember, and as well as thefeature.io. We're all there and happy to chat at any point. So thanks so much for having us again.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure.
Real
And
pleasure,
thank you for hosting this conversation today.
Yes.
Yeah,
If
thanks.
this is
Well,
fun.
Ronan.
If anyone has not seen the cinematic trailer, just go to the website right now and watch it. Like, it is
Jaw dropping.
Yeah. So
And if you happen to be in town for like whatever, are you guys planning another game demo? I was gonna say I got to check out the game demo, and that was fun and that was cool. So I'm really looking forward to the fact that you're saying it's kind of getting polished up.
I mean,
Yeah,
you have
and-
to end this with FOMO. I mean, does it have to be that?
We're in Web3, man.
Very good, guys. All right, well, have a phenomenal rest of your day and weekend, and I hope we get to talk again real soon.
Yep.
Yeah,
Sounds
for sure.
good. Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.
See ya.
Brilliant.